Yeah, hello everyone, and welcome to the cert-manager bi-weekly meeting. It's the 6th of February 2025, and we have a variety of topics on the agenda today, including the kind of announcement section that I always like to have, which I'll jump straight into. The first thing is, if you're following cert-manager at all, you'll be aware, but we've released cert-manager 1.17, which is the latest release of it, and it was on time. No issues been reported so far. All seems very smooth and happy, and that's always lovely to see. It's really nice that it was on time as well. Um, Quickly, I'll say that I suppose the highlighted features in my regard would be it's now easier to set passwords on key stores. A lot easier, I would say. It kind of removes the need to have a separate secret there. Another one is there's been a slight compliance change to hashing algorithms when using RSA certificates, which is kind of an under the hood but like important change. There's a new feature gate from Adam, who's in the call, who something about merging C injector certificates to reduce downtime there, which is it's on the face of it going to save outages. And we made a couple of other changes to various feature flags and things. The release notes, as always, are on the website and on GitHub. Moving on from Cert Manager, we have a Trust Manager announcement, which is that we're going to use a Debian Bookworm package soon. We've already built the Debian Bookworm image, which is available. I've tested it and it works, and it's more modern than the old Trust package that we had. We'll change to it by default. I think the current plan is soon. There's a PR in flight to do it, and it'll just take a quick release to do it after that. The warning we'll have to put out and be careful about is that will change people by default unless they explicitly chose to keep the old image. That's fine, but like it's a thing that people may be somewhat surprised by when it does happen, but in practice, it shouldn't really affect anything. The changes between the two are people upgrade from Debian versions all the time, and it works fine. So it's not a huge deal, but that will happen in the coming future. The last thing to shout out is Erik did a release of Approver Policy, which fixes a small bug. If you're a certificate enthusiast like me and you use ED 25519 certificates, then this is the Approver Policy release for you. But other than that, it's a standard kind of thing. It does include a bit of support for generating clients for Approver Policy if you're inclined to edit your certificate request policies programmatically in Go. That's the end of the announcements. Assuming that no one else is going to jump in and announce anything, we can move on to the main agenda. The first one is me because I got in there really quickly this week. But this is actually for a community PR that I wanted to get people's thoughts on. So it's good that we've got a good group here now. So this PR was raised a long time ago, almost a year ago. And the aim here is to be able to customize what resource limits are applied to the acmesolver pods that we create for HTTP 01 challenges. Effectively, it just adds it to the CRD that you can set a resource request and say, like, I need this or that. The user explains it. The PR looks generally like it does what you would expect it to do. It does need a rebase now, but the user is committed to doing that if this will be accepted. I'm bringing it up mostly because I want to make sure that this user like either gets a yes or a no on their PR that they've been waiting with for a long time. And that's a yes or no for 118. So I'd like to come up with a solution for them. This seems fine to me, but it's the kind of API design question where I start to second guess myself. Does anyone have any thoughts on embedding resource requests into our tooling in this way.
Do you have anything in particular that you're skeptic about? I would say yes.
No,
Is there
go on.
is there a reason that we want to modify this and not just set it to same default? I mean, the workload will always be the same, right? It just has to respond to one challenge.
I'd say,
Yeah,
if you're getting it per issuer, that means they have to set it every time for every issuer. Whereas a user, a cluster may be set up so users can create their own issuers, and if they forget to set that, then the pod won't have resources.
put into chat what the person who raised the PR has said, which is they have limit ranges that they need the pods to fit into.
Like,
But we can just say this is how much CPU the solver will use, and this is how much memory the solver will use, and just set those requests
we
and
could
not allow people to change it.
well, another thing is we could allow people to change it, but through the config file. Setting defaults, and then like if people really want to mess with it, just do it in the cert-manager config file, which can be set straight through the Helm bars.
Yeah, there's no reason this couldn't be a command line flag that applies to all issuers.
Does everything in the config file have to be command line file? I mean, I don't care either.
Either or.
Yeah.
Is it theoretically possible for different solvers for different issuers to actually need different resources?
It's hard to imagine.
It's just a web server, isn't it? It's literally serving a string when you hit a certain endpoint. So no matter what issuer Acme implementation you're using, like it's always going to do the solver's always going to do the exact same thing.
Yeah, it's like defined in a spec. So if something was different enough that it needed different limits, then it probably wouldn't be Acme anymore, and we wouldn't support it.
The only caveat is if the Acme server is broken, it starts DDoSing you for no good reason, but that sounds like a them problem rather than an us problem.
Yeah.
You might plug in your own Docker image with a Python implementation of the Acme solver if you were playing around.
Yeah,
you not supported, but
and if you were doing that, then you'd do that at a config level when you install cert-manager. So at that point, you'd probably want to tweak the variables at that stage, which leads us back to having it in the config file.
I guess one thing I'm thinking from looking at the changes they've made is, I suppose the config file does solve it if your limits and requests per namespace are all the same. But since this also changes the issuer resource, this is variable on a namespace level. So I suppose what the user wants is to have this be customizable per namespace because they have different limit ranges. And
I think the main problem is what he says there. They have limit ranges, which means the solver pod doesn't work ideally because they are applying a limit range default. Hearing what you're saying, I think I agree with Adam now that setting this on a config level should be sufficient. Yeah.
Because the limit range is going to inject a default value, and if that's what they're hitting, then like that's something we can do much by setting a value all the time. And if we're going to set a value all the time, the place I'd configure it is centrally. The one thing I'm trying to avoid is adding in this environment they have to set these fields. So in this environment on this cluster, I want to avoid making it required for people to add extra config to every issue they create, for it to work on their cluster. Like that seems like a lot of effort for our users.
Yeah, I
that
think
could be solved by an admission controller, Kubernetes or something. It's possible, but
It's possible, but then like, why? What we're basically saying, we could have solved this centrally, but now you've got to solve it. This is your
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah. I mean, we know which image we normally the solver pod will run with, and how much resources are required for it to work nicely.
It needs very little. Like
Yeah.
it's incredibly, and we could take the very little we calculate it and double it, and it'd still be very little.
They might have set very, very low limit range. We
I-
are quite low in our cluster, which means that a general app will almost not be possible to run with the resources.
Yeah, and that's a common pattern. We did that at my last job. Is we set it to like 10 M and like 64 meg because it was the literal minimum that Kubernetes let us set us to. So like nothing could really run.
Yeah.
Okay, so it seems like what we actually want to do is go back to the user and say, if we set defaults to X, would this work for all the namespaces in your cluster? And if they say yes, then we say, okay, instead of doing this, accepting this PR, we will make a PR which adds a config thing. Because if it doesn't, we want more information from them about why this alternate proposal wouldn't work.
It seems reasonable to go back to them because I guess from our end, we don't want to expand the CRDs if we can avoid it. Like that just adds complexity in various fronts, and
Yeah, it makes
It's-
it harder also to use, right?
yeah, it seems clear that's a good direction to take. So I will respond on the ticket and see what the user says. They might be interested in committing an option if we review it with it sooner than a year.
I'm still not 100% convinced that we should make it configurable. I think if we choose the defaults right, we might just get away with setting those and not making it configurable.
Yeah, I suppose if we can avoid doing work, because if nobody needs something, then we can avoid doing it entirely, and that's a good thing. I can certainly, like Richard said, if you had a custom image of some kind, I can imagine why you might want it to be at least a little bit configurable.
Also,
That's covered by Josh's suggestion. We will first write that will it be acceptable to set some sensible values.
Yeah.
also like from a multi-arch point of view, we need to make sure that the defaults are sensible for like for CPU, for example, for like ARM CPUs as well. Because I don't know what the profile looks like on different platforms.
Yeah. So I'll go back to the user and explain what we've just discussed. I think that should be reasonable.
Do the resource requests and limits include what's it called, the ephemeral storage, like the amount of storage taken up by the layers of the Docker image? Because like another case would be like someone who'd built UBI, Red Hat UBI versions of the images would require more ephemeral storage, perhaps.
Is ephemeral storage include the Docker image, or is it just the things you write on top of the Docker image?
I can't remember.
It's like temp files that you need during operation. Yeah.
So like you have your base Docker, and then any file you write on top of that on the right layer on the actual container counts towards your ephemeral storage.
I felt like I read somewhere that the size of the image did factor into it somewhere, but
potentially.
Our images should all be on, like the normal distribution should be read-only file systems, so we shouldn't be writing anything unless we have some temp folder mounted, but I don't think we do have those. So even when you place those binaries in a UBI image, I don't think we'll be writing anything.
I also think that people probably aren't limiting ephemeral storage if it does factor in container images, because otherwise they're really limiting what container images you can run inside a namespace.
I think the wider point is like that resource requests and limits can grow new things over time, and if we're embedding it, then we have to come up with a plan on how to adopt new ones. Like if we embed into our CRDs, but that
Acmesolver might need GPUs in the future.
But if the image is configurable, doesn't it make sense to make the resource requirements configurable as well?
I mean, there's something to be said for that. Like we have, I believe we have a custom internal to CyberArk as a product. We have a custom build of the acmesolver image that use FIPS, for example. That you could reasonably say that might have a different resource requirement. Like I don't think in practice it would be any different, but
I would
Also-
imagine Red Hat has their own image.
wouldn't surprise me.
I would argue that the main reason that you have this option to configure the image is just change the registry and still use the official images, right?
Hmm.
From
Like
an open
UBI
source
and-
perspective.
And UBI and FIPS is a bit kind of using what's there, but not necessary, I think.
But we can anyway do this gradually, setting some defaults first, which are sensible for the default image that we use. And then if someone asks to make it configurable, it shouldn't be a big problem to allow them to file a PR for that. I don't see a problem with it.
The main thing is that adding config things to the config, just you have to edit a lot of files for the random conversions we've got. But
Yeah.
it's yeah.
We have config for almost everything, so it's like a drop in the ocean.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like it's fairly clear what we do next in any case. We'll go and ask the user and it should be like we can at least move forwards, right?
Yeah, it would be very nice to know what their limit ranges are, because I just created an ingress and the thing has limits and requests. It says the limit is 100 mil CPU and the request is 10 mil CPU and the memory is fixed to 64 mega bitey thingy, whatever, for megabytes or whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Well, I mean, I'll ask that as well. Like ask them to give us a read on what is set for them. It can't hurt.
It could be quite possible as well. A customer, maybe not this one, but a user having a policy with Kyverno or something that says pods with resources without resource requests just don't schedule, can't be created.
I've encountered that before. Cool. In the interest of time, I'm gonna shift us on to the next point because I think that one's clear enough. And this one's Erik. So I'll hand the mic over to you.
Yes, thank you. This is about me as a non-CyberArk employee being able to fully create releases of cert-manager projects. Tim has done some really nice work in this area, but after releasing approval policy 019, I realized that this is still not fully fixed. My motivation for suggesting a potential workaround is that I have a daytime job where I cannot work with cert-manager in general. So I have to set up some weekends, evenings, and so on. And it would be nice to be able to cut releases without waiting for some of you to come back to work on Monday or the day after. So my suggestion is I briefly discussed this with Ashley, whether it's acceptable to officially migrate to OCI as the source for our Helm charts, which means that we will still support the old HTTPS on JetStack, but I would also suggest to rewrite the release procedure so that when the OCI Helm chart is available and you can verify it, you can actually publish the release, even if it might happen that the chart is not uploaded to the old HTTPS.
Can I kind of add some context here? So before, what happened is for most of our projects, we actually had to manually copy paste Helm charts into the charts.jetstack.io HTTPS Helm registry. And now instead what happens is when you release something, an OCI image is created, and then the charts.jetstack.io repository actually finds that chart exists in the OCI registry, and it copies it to the charts.jetstack.io domain. So that's all done. I like your idea, but I think there is one additional step I would like to get in first, and that is to move from the Jetstack KeyIO OCI registry to the cert-manager KeyIO OCI registry, or not move, but do both, such that once we say that you have to look at the Helm chart in the OCI registry, it's the cert-manager OCI registry, not the Jetstack one. I think once we get that all fixed and working, we can switch to Helm charts. But right now, if we point people to the charts in the Jetstack KeyIO registry, that means we'll have to point them to something else again once we move to the cert-manager KeyIO registry.
Yeah. Is it possible to get kind of a vanity domain or something on the OCI?
No,
not that we've seen.
It has to be supported by registry. I don't think it's supported by key or GitHub. There are third parties that provide that as a service that we're looking at at one point, but it's not never been high priority.
That would be super cool, and also allow us to have multiple mirrors in case K is down, GitHub container registry is down, and so on.
I was gonna the issue you had was that PR was raised, but you couldn't approve it, could you? You needed a verifying point. I know we've now given access to the repository to non-verify for the purpose of releasing this. Could we use a code owners file to set with a wildcard to say if you're releasing a chart that has cert-manager dash or approval policy dash in it, then Erik could approve it.
So Erik doesn't have access to the Jetstack charts repo, so it would be there'd be a security change to allow him. I might be misunderstanding what you're saying.
We need to grant access is the problem, I guess.
Yeah, like that. Like, so I don't think there's anything like tremendously important in that repo that is like a trade secret or anything, but there is other stuff in there which is not owned by the cert-manager project, and that's kind of always been the case. So I think it would be an uncomfortable conversation for us to say, like, can we let someone else into this? I think syncing is much smoother from that perspective. Like, if we can avoid that, I think it would be good, and just leave that as like the legacy thing that it will be.
Yeah. I mean, it is not just that much stuff. On the other hand, it's also stuff that isn't all entirely available through your public registry.
Yeah,
It's
certainly
nothing confidential in there.
Yeah, everything in there is public. That is certainly true. But it's just there are other stakeholders who maintain other charts in there that they like. With just you, Erik, it would be totally fine because we all know you. But like, if we were to add other maintainers, it becomes this constant question of like, oh, we've just given this person access, and
I actually prefer the alternative that Tim described, actually. Instead of just granting me permissions to do this. It would be much more transparent if we did it the other way around.
Yeah.
It's actually it's not a big change, I think. Like, all the hard work has been done. We just have to approve these PRs that are now automatically created. I think the main reason we haven't done it yet is just because we want to make sure it works first. Which I think it does now, right? Ash, you got a PR that was automatically created, you approved it?
don't think I've had one automatically go through. I'm not sure, but like if we're coming from a security angle, I think there's some spookiness around that anyway, because there is no blocker on someone doing a release and it going straight to live. That like there's nothing currently. We don't have a pipeline where you do a release and then it gets tested and then it goes live. Like we kind of have that a little bit with Jetstack chats at the moment because we do it manually before we merge the PR. I think this kind of segues into my concern with the whole pipeline that we currently have, which is that there is nothing stopping us from releasing something live immediately, even if it's broken. Like the only place that any chart or image ends up is directly in live, right? I don't want to graft on like adding testing as a blocker for this. Like I want Erik to be able to release the same as us ASAP. I think that's important to me. But also at the moment we at least have that bit where we stop and say, does this actually work, right? If we remember to test it, like there is a bit where someone will set up the chart PR testing branch and test against that, and it won't be live until someone's approved it there.
But we still unconditionally publish the images. It's kind of untested from the same perspective as you're describing here.
It is, but nobody uses them unless the chart's available that's pointing to them, I don't think.
There is, in theory, someone using something like Cargo, subscribing to the registry that is polling for new images, and like there could be, in theory, people using images as they are released. I mean, like the way other repositories handle this is they first publish to a staging registry, and then once that has been validated, they do a crane copy or something into their live registry, which is a great way to do it. It is a massive rework, but like that is an option.
I mean, we're starting to use Crane more for exactly that model of things, and I would certainly encourage it, minus the fact that I'm not the person who would be stuck doing it for cert-manager, although I'm literally working on that now for our stuff.
Yeah, like I guess what I'm thinking is it doesn't sound that different to what we kind of need to do anyway, by which I mean, if we want to migrate to a cert-manager branded repository and sort of leave the Jetstack one as like a thing that is synced to, then we still need a container sync job between two different registries. So we still need at least one step of syncing. If all of our release jobs push to a staging area first, and then it has to be synced further once we've given permission, like it's an extra step of syncing, but it's not like we have to do some amount of syncing anyway. So we're just adding a bit more and the opportunity to pause things and test them before they're live. And that would apply for images as well as charts. And
a lot of that testing could eventually be automated. cert-manager chart repository already has the ability to test with arbitrary charts.
Yeah,
for the end tests.
There's tons of way to fix this. We could raise a PR. When you merge it, the release is published and the images, everything is uploaded. That's one way. I mean, there are other ways to do it to cover your concern, Ash, at least.
yeah.
But I don't see a big difference between the image and the Helm chart, at least from my point of view.
I mean, I think, like I said, I think it's kind of a theoretical thing where it's like theoretically people could use those images, but in practice, I don't think people do until we publish the Helm chart, which we can test before anyone's using the images. But certainly, I don't want any difference between the images and the charts. Like, I suppose what I'm worried about is an unintended consequence of everything going live just because we're adopting OCI, which is what would happen for everything except cert-manager by changing this. The frustrating thing is I don't think it would be that hard to do any of what we're talking about. I think it's a matter of sitting down and just like getting stuck into it.
Is it worth the action from this being create a proposal and then get it written down, and then someone can go and get stuck in?
Yeah, like we've sort of got stuff a little bit proposally around this, haven't we?
We've got a couple, yeah. We've got one to move off the old registry for images, one to move Helm to OCI. We've got a couple of proposals floating around.
You've got
Maybe we just accept those and do them.
Helm to OCI has been completed, so that one can be moved from the list. I do like the idea to use like a sync job. I think that would be quite cool. Maybe with a staging environment, yes.
What's also frustrating is I have a bit of test code in closed source at Venafi that would be helpful testing everything all together in the staging environment, but that I can't really open source. I feel like this. I feel like the question that I end up with at the end of this is, like, undoubtedly it's good to move to a new cert-manager branded registry. Undoubtedly it's good to allow Erik to release exactly the same as any of the rest of us, or Adam, you count as well actually on that one. Like those are obviously good things, and obviously having a staging environment is a good thing as well. Like it's all good stuff, and it's like, what do we actually need right now? Like, would we? I don't know if we can automatically approve PRs going into that charts repo. Like that, I think that's what it comes down to, I guess, a bit. If we can, we could decide that that's an acceptable thing for us and move forwards that way. If not, then there's steps that must be required before we get there, right?
This is also something that does not have to be done by someone from Venafi CyberArk. Like, all the images are now published in public OCI registries, and we could just create some kind of GitHub action that periodically creates PRs to publish them to some production registry, and then we swap in the KIO cert-manager registry as the production one, and we add some credentials to push it to the JetStack one too, and basically then it's done.
Yeah. I suppose in the world where I guess we could ask the question internally at Venafi, like, would auto approving PRs for the sync job, would that be acceptable? It does still change. It means that the charts go live as soon as a release is done. Like, that's spooky, but it's not. It doesn't change cert-manager.
It's quite common, and we could add more testing or do things if we see that this is a problem.
Yeah. Like, eventually it will be. I famously released a cert-manager beta that I didn't test the Helm chart for, and it was completely broken. Like,
Okay, you couldn't render it, or
there was a syntax error. I can't remember what the problem was,
okay.
but I know Richard was very cheesed off.
Well, at Venafi, we had a major cert-manager release, which I had a change in, which completely broke some people's install.
It's very easy to test that the chart can render with all default values. That's an extremely
Yeah.
simple test. But of course, testing with all kinds of values, that's a lot of work.
So Erik, what is it you want to release at the weekend? I'm a bit worried about releasing things at the weekend, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I work in the weekends, as I explained. I have a daytime job, and I'm pretty busy at my daytime job. I'm responsible for Kafka and OpenShift clusters. So I have to work with, if I'm supposed to work with cert-manager project, I have to do it in the evenings or in the weekends. And this weekend, I had some spare time, and there was a user who submitted a quite important bug fix to approve a policy. So,
all right, so it's approve a policy, right? It's not cert-manager that you're desperate to release.
no, I don't personally feel that confident in cert-manager yet. I will eventually get there, but I'm mostly working with the side projects right now.
And to be honest, cert-manager is so different that, like, it's like none of what we're discussing right now really applies to it. Currently, it has a very separate process.
So if you triggered the release of approver policy this weekend, it would have I've forgotten what happens. Do the Helm charts get pushed to an OCI registry, or do they just get attached to the release in GitHub?
It gets pushed to an OCI registry, and then now it opens automatically a PR in the JetStack chart repo.
Ultimately, though, you want the Helm charts to be in that OCI registry, so you've almost got what you want, haven't you? That the people who had the bug, who had reported the bug, could after you had pushed the tag, have installed your version of approver policy.
I don't think the OCI registry is published somewhere, is it?
We don't document it at all, no.
No. So I think it's kind of an unofficial distribution of the Helm chart right now. And also the release documentation says that I should only publish the release after checking that the chart works from the JetStack chart repo. So I'm trying to follow the procedures here.
I see. So
yeah,
you could just, for approver policy, you could just, we don't, having it synced to the old JetStack charts repository is a separate issue, isn't it? You could, maybe the new process is that the OCI registry is documented, and that becomes the source of truth.
That's what I'm suggesting, actually. That was my suggestion in the point on the agenda, was that we gradually migrate to it. But I get Tim's point that we should make sure that the OCI edition of the Helm chart is in a proper repo, so we would avoid a migration later on again.
So that's the first thing to do.
Yeah.
And that's possible to do, right? That cert-manager subdirectory in quay.io does exist.
It does exist,
so.
and we do own it. Yeah. It was owned by James Munley, and he found some credentials for it somewhere, and now we actually do own it, and it's the 1Password.
Sorry, the one that does exist is the cert-manager one, as opposed to the JetStack one.
cert-manager one doesn't.
Oh, do they?
Sorry. The cert-manager one exists, but not with anything meaningful in it. Only the JetStack one is used in practice.
So as a step -3, could we make a copy of the current 3 latest releases from JetStack into cert-manager, and then having had some releases that are visible, change the documentation to point to the cert-manager copy, and then change the instructions for releasing to release the cert-manager copy?
Sort of, although we probably want to change all the charts when we publish them to the cert-manager repo to point to images in the cert-manager repo as well. Rather, at the moment, they all point to the JetStack repo, and if I install from one, I expect it to pull the images from that registry, which is another complicating factor, I guess.
Fair. So technically the charts are not actually identical. They're actually functionally equivalent, but actually distinct.
I would think long term that's probably what we would want to do. There's no firm decision been made on that.
I would say that we necessarily not have to connect those tasks. Now you pull the Helm chart from charts jetstack.io, and the images are pulled from k.io/jetstack. There's a difference there, of course.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like if that it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
It's not a blocker.
We should do both, of course, but I don't see why they're connected.
Yeah, I think we do the simple copy identical charts first for back issues, and then change the release process later so that they're actually divergent on that field, the image sources. But it seems like a way forward that's not unreasonable. And it gives people the ability to point to it even if we haven't done a new release yet with the new canonical. We can change the canonical pointing, which has old releases with old image sources. And then moving forward, eventually everything is canonically in K.
And that would also mean that we don't release new versions to the old registry. Are we okay with doing that?
At some point, we should be okay with that, but not immediately, I would say.
Yeah, I would agree. You have a transition where you have a new release that goes to both, or and new releases, whatever.
Should we move on? I think we didn't come to a conclusion here, but at least we have some action points, I think.
Erik, could I ask you to write up what you consider to be the action points in the doc, and
Yep.
we'll move on to Josh's first thing. Josh, do you want to? Oh, is this just as a discussion point for?
These are discussion points. I don't own any of these PRs. The only one I have that's PR, I think is currently ready for somebody to review, is not on the list because it wasn't ready when I started this meeting.
Fair enough.
So feel free to drive them.
So I've put a link to the first PR, which Josh linked here, and so this is another sort of long-term community PR that we would like to make progress on. And I think the description of this is that it gives us the heebie-jeebies to just blindly copy annotations like this because we're worried that something may go wrong. And the aim here is to come to a conclusion of what we can tell this person. Like they are fairly convinced that this would be safe. Is this something safe? Like, does anyone feel strongly about this? Can we just wave it through? The Erik had a really good point reviewing this. I think it was you, where he's saying like with labels we had to make manual changes to accommodate them, and like make sure we weren't copying a dangerous label across. Like, do we have that concern about annotations?
Wasn't this already implemented with this secret template stuff?
But it's not the secret, it's the certificate.
Yeah. So this is copying annotations from an ingress onto your certificate.
Okay. And why do we need annotations on a certificate?
I can get, like, if you want to pass annotations to certificate for like changing, I don't know, if the certificate copy adds annotations downstream and eventually they reach something useful. But also, say you've got a bunch of annotations on your to do with like ALBs. They may make absolutely no sense on the certificate object.
Do we support any annotations on the certificate resource from a cert-manager point of view?
I think they get passed on to certificate requests, which is where they could be useful. So say I've got an issue where that does something with annotations.
I mean, one thing is we should probably ask them to give us an actual example of what fields they actually are consuming and who's consuming it. And I think actually probably cert-manager should favor that as a response for requests like this. Please give us an actual example use case as opposed to a hand waved. That would have been a good thing for the other PR that we discussed earlier as well.
They have actually provided documentation. It's a Venify annotation. Shoot myself.
Suddenly we've got to merge it. It's in your interest.
In one of the comments, it's like it's a Venify metadata annotation.
He also says that he suggested to just copy the Venify annotation that he needed, but then a maintainer said to take them all.
Yeah, like then as a issue, if I create my own issue, I'll be like, can you add my annotations to this list? And it becomes a like. Part of me wonders, like, should it be part of the issuer config?
It
Like
should be, yeah.
in the issuer, you say these are annotations I support, and like it goes, and that when the shim looks at the certificate object, the shim can look up the certificate object, look up the issuer. No, doesn't. Yeah, look up the issuer object and just go, I need to whack any annotations that look like this across.
Yeah.
And that's not that simple to implement, I think.
No, it's not. I'm not saying anything about simplicity. I'm saying like if we don't want to copy everything blindly across, it's either it needs to be configured somewhere, and yeah,
It's one of these things where, so I always used to say, if you want to do complex stuff like this, don't use the ingress shim, just create the certificate directly. And then
Right.
people said, then the response is, I've remembered it this time, people want to make use of cert-manager without having to know about any of its resources or have permissions to create certificates. So this is a person who's got that constraint and they're using the Venafi open source issuer.
I mean,
Is it true though? Is it true that they couldn't just create the certificate themselves?
if that's really a service you want to provide to your users in your cluster, that sounds like a case for policy.
Sounds like an enterprise feature to me.
Hmm.
The enterprise cert manager, the Verify cert manager can copy it across. But yeah, it's like you could have Kyverno policy which just adds the annotation onto your certificate. Like,
But does Venafi, the commercial product, support this annotation on the ingress shim?
the commercial Verify is just the current cert manager but with the support. I don't think there's any
Okay.
custom code.
I believe this is supported by a different issuer, is it? Like this is a Venafi enhanced issuer thing?
Yeah, I
this-
mean there are some annotations too that it uses. I'm not sure which annotation is it that it's using. It's like
It's custom
Custom
fields.
fields.
yeah.
So
That prompt will reappear there too. I mean, yeah, they can just create a certificate resource directly.
Maybe they're not allowed to do it.
so where
Part of it is like we have like there is a way to do this. It's just that you don't want to do the way to do this. So is this really a problem?
It's the
Partner-
whole keeping it in sync, isn't it? That's the complication. It's all right copying it on the first when you first create the certificate, but then it's like, what happens when you change the annotations on the ingress and remove that annotation from the ingress? But how do you know whether it was added to the certificate manually or?
Look at the managed fields. I'm more worried about just blindly copying it because that will affect all users of cert-manager. Suddenly they will get the annotations propagated to the certificate and then to the certificate requests. There could be worms there without us knowing it right now.
We
what's
could
the,
have an annotation on the ingress which specifies what other annotations it's allowed to copy.
I would rather that, frankly, because it's a lot easier to reason over than either of the copy certain actual Venafi fields or copy over all fields.
Like a
And-
common separated list of just like
Yeah.
copy these, please.
Yes,
But
and
there's-
it's opt-in as opposed to surprise me on an upgrade.
there's absolutely no question we would like hard code a Venafi one to copy. Like that's absolutely not going to happen.
But having an allow list of the annotations that you will eventually support could make sense, but it complicates things, of course.
We could also introduce a certificate template. So I just shared these secret templates, right? We could do the same thing for certificates.
But
So you
it's
just have
hard to
more
express with the
complex.
shim.
Certificate
Sorry?
template is something we've talked about in the past though as well, like the ability to have like a bunch of defaults configured for your certificate around like size and like RSA and a bunch of random stuff.
Would that really include annotations?
It could.
I think yeah, annotations on a certificate require a certificate template would make sense to copy to any certificates that get issued via that template.
But then for this user, right, their use cases, they just want one annotation copying off their ingress to the cert.
Just yeah, look at have a cert-manager.io/allowed annotations annotation, and then that can be a comma separated list, and we use that to filter.
I wouldn't do filtering. I would just say there's an annotation called cert-manager.io/certificate annotations, and that's like a JSON map that has the key values to add to the annotations.
Yeah, it'll look a bit messy when you're writing your YAML out, but it'd work.
Probably we've got something like that somewhere. I'm drawing a blank on where, but I've seen something to that effect.
It's a question of like at that point you're we're losing there as validation, because if it's a comma separated list, all the annotations that they're copying across are guaranteed to be key value string. But if we are saying it has to be a JSON blob full of your annotations, if they miss off a quote or a closed brace or something, or put a comma in the wrong place, then suddenly there's no validation around that anymore. They could pass as garbage.
Well, it's what we do for the secret template, so that this PR does that already. So we already have functionality like that, where it's complex objects in a annotation.
I feel like, to try and summarize the discussion to some extent, we are not comfortable doing this by default for all annotations. Like simple as, like we're not going to accept this as is.
Yeah. Here are some options that we like that we've talked about in our bi-weekly, for which you can watch the YouTube video. Hello, YouTube. And do any of these options sound like something you can get behind?
But we could suggest what Tim wrote. I mean, if we already did this for certificate template, why shouldn't we provide a similar mechanism for this? It will look messy, of course, but
I kind of just want to like a permanent feature gate that's always alpha, that just like, if you enable, it's a flag ultimately, like copy ingress annotations to certificates.
I was thinking about the feature gate, but it doesn't make sense for a feature like this because I will never enable it by default.
Yeah, it can't be enabled by default, but we could add a flag that they could pass. Like,
Or we could make it global config again of like these are the allowed annotations that will copy through.
yeah.
Going back to having an allow list, but making it an install option.
A config flag like that seems reasonable because I'd have a hard time believing that you'd have the same annotation on two different ingresses where only one of the two ingresses wants to have that annotation copied over.
Yeah. That seems a reasonable thing to suggest to them, but I think what's important is we know the next step for this PR, and that's we're not going to accept it as is, but we'd like to discuss the alternatives, and we pinky promise to be attentive and not leave it until June to discuss it with you.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
That's cool. I will respond to them. We are at 6 o'clock, and we did have one more PR that Josh had put in to highlight around Helm chart global repositories.
Amusingly, this one I actually am more interested in than the other one. Like because we have our own Kubernetes cluster with our own image backing. And it is much nicer to be able to set a global thing saying, I want all the images to come from our local repository, where we'll be using package.deb, which will get us image streaming. And having to copy down the thing to each of the individual image things throughout the chart is annoying. So
I have no problems with. I mean, it's not PR, is it? It's an issue.
Yeah.
I have no PR. I have no problem with allowing global images to be a set because, like, I don't think it breaks anything, and I think it allows cert-manager to be a subchart much easier.
Yeah.
Okay, so I equally don't share any concerns with this. In fact, it might make a internal Venafi tool a little bit easier, so I'm quietly happy about that. But I think the probably the thing to say then is, like, yeah, we'd probably be open to this, happy to review a PR. So I will put that into that issue and add a link to Slack for them to ping us for a review when they raise it.
Lifecycle frozen it as well, so it doesn't get auto closed again.
That's a good show, yeah.
I might try and do that, but I currently have like 3 people slacking me saying, hey, we want other things. So I don't expect to do that this week.
Fair play. Fair play. Cool. Well, I feel like that's a natural point to end it. We've got through all the agenda. I'm going to stop the recording. So thank you everyone that watched. Like and subscribe as usual.